So thank you everybody for joining us. I'm Tom Snyder and I am Annie's peer over in Eugene. I'm the district conservationist for East Lane County, and I'm also part of the NRCS facilitation cadre. So I'm just kind of here as backup for Annie to help with technical issues. As Annie's speaking here, I'm going to put my phone number and my email in the chat. And if anybody is having any technical issues or needs questions or help, you'd be able to reach out to me. Annie.
Great. Thanks, Tom. So I'm Annie Marion, I'm the district conservationist in Waldport Field Office. I cover Lincoln County and Western Lane County. We had our Lincoln local work group meeting last Thursday, and today we've got our Siuslaw or West Lane County local work group meeting. Thanks everyone for joining us. We are gonna start out with, let's see if I can get forward here. Okay. Oops. There we go. So I just want to do a quick, we did our welcome. We'll do a little agenda overview of what we're going to go over today. And then I'll talk real briefly about why we're here. What are the local work group meetings about? So after that, we'll go into an update on current USDA NRCS programs in West Lane County, and then I'll hand it over to Seth with the Siuslaw Soil and Water Conservation District for an update on their program activities over the last year. We'll take a quick stretch break and then go into a very brief update on some other programs that are available through our sister agencies, the Farm Service Agency and Rural Development. Then we'll have some time for looking ahead, looking at our priorities for future strategies in our area. And that will include local foods, forest health, and native oyster restoration, as well as any other priorities that you all bring up. And then we should have some time at the end of the meeting for a quick round robin. Anybody who has updates or other priorities, ideas that they would like to share with the group. And we'll wrap up and get out of here by noon. So just to give a little background on why we're here, what the local work groups are about. NRCS started out in let me get my screens out of the way here so I can see, sorry. Started out as the Soil Erosion Service back in 1933. This was established by President Roosevelt as the Dust Bowl was beginning and there were really serious erosion issues happening across the Midwest. That eventually turned into the Soil Conservation Service that was created as a permanent agency in the USDA in 1935. And that set up offices across the country. USDA agents went out and started trying to work with landowners and helping them figure out how to reduce erosion, get control of this problem. Unfortunately, it wasn't very successful at first. They quickly found out that local landowners, farmers were a bit skeptical and reticent to work with these outsiders coming in and telling them what to do. And so they had to rethink it. President Roosevelt sent out a directive to all of the states to set up local soil conservation districts. These are made up of board directors that are elected in local elections, and it's really landowners, farmers, and other stakeholders in the area that are directing these activities. So ever since that time, the soil conservation districts, later soil and water conservation districts, have been the main partner for NRCS's activities. And this is a way for us to have locally led conservation, making sure that the programs we're delivering are done in a way that really fits the local climate, the local cropping systems, the local conditions. So we have these meetings every year to share our activities, show what we've been up to, and to get input from all of you, our local work group. So at this time, I think we'll go ahead and do a quick poll just to see who we have here. Tom, if you can launch the first poll, we want to get an idea of who we have participating today. Do I need to launch it? Oh, there it is. All right. So who are you representing? And I think this is a multiple choice. So if you are a landowner and a SWCD staffer board, you can check both.
Sorry, now you can check that. It was already done.
Oops. There we go.
Okay, I'm going to share the results.
All right. Great. So it looks like we've got a couple landowners, state agency, several local agency and nonprofits, a couple tribal representatives, and community members. Am I missing anybody? And others. All right, great. We'll go to the next poll, Tom. How did you all hear about this meeting?
So it looks like it was mostly your email. Annie, are you seeing the results?
Yep. Does everybody
Okay.
see that? Yeah. All right. Yeah, I send these email invites out to everybody who's participated in the past, or other folks who've said they're interested. It's a public meeting, so I also put meeting notices out in the newspaper. I don't know if anybody ever sees those and joins us that way, but we try to get the word out. And has everybody used Zoom before? Looks like most people have. All right. Hopefully we won't have any issues. We'll never know about that. But... All right. So I am going to go ahead and, oops. And now I'm frozen. There we go. Okay, so this is kind of what I talked about, but the purpose of our local work group meeting today is sort of threefold. We've got an opportunity to share. So Seth and I are both going to share updates on projects and things that we've been doing over the last year. And I also want to introduce a couple of new USDA NRCS programs that folks might not be familiar with, but we definitely want to make sure that we're giving a chance for everybody to listen and gather input from producers and partners. This is going to help us shape our plans and prioritize our future projects and identify if there's any emerging issues that we need to address, and just kind of do a general check-in, see how we're doing, what we can do better. And then I also like these meetings to be a chance for you all to get to connect with each other. I think we have a really great group of partners in this part of the county, and it's nice to be able to connect with each other, see what we're doing, and see how we can work together. Folks who have attended my local work group meetings in the past may have seen this slide before, but I like to start out with just a general introduction to what some of our main USDA Farm Bill programs are, just in case folks aren't familiar with them already. EQIP is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. This is our main funding strategy, which we deliver through a couple of different programs. The conservation implementation strategies are locally directed focus areas for funding pools, and we'll go over the ones that we currently have in our area. We also have national initiatives that are offered statewide, including the High Tunnel and Organic Initiative. EQIP CIC, or the Conservation Incentive Contracts, was a new program in 2021. And this is meant kind of as a stepping stone between EQIP and CSP, the Conservation Stewardship Program. They are 5-year contracts that include annual management practices as well as other enhancements or associated practices. The Conservation Stewardship Program is meant for folks who have already been doing active management stewardship of their land and are looking to take their stewardship to the next level. So they're 5-year contracts that include annual payments for maintaining their level of conservation, as well as enhancements on top of that for additional activities. The Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, or CREP, is actually part of FSA's Conservation Reserve Program, but NRCS provides technical assistance. And these are 10 or 15-year contracts that provide annual payments, as well as cover most of the cost of restoration for taking marginal pasture land out of production to restore degraded riparian areas or wetlands. And then the last major program here is the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program. This includes both wetland reserve easements and Healthy Forest Reserve Program, as well as ALE, the agricultural land easements. We don't have any of those here on the Central Coast, but these are meant to protect, restore, and enhance wetlands and forests through conservation easements. Often these are permanent easements, but the WRE also offers a 30-year easement. I also wanted to talk about just a few other USDA programs that we haven't been using here on the Central Coast, but could be available to us. The Regional Conservation Partnership Program is a way to get additional EQIP or CSP funding through a really partner-driven conservation. And this is where partners really take the active lead in, they've got the expertise, the experience, and capacity to manage both the partnership and the projects, do a lot of the outreach to landowners, and quantify, keep track of outcomes. These are often very large projects, and they require a one-to-one match of partner funds and NRCS funds. Another program is the Conservation Innovation Grants. SIG is a competitive grant program that supports development of new tools, approaches, practices, or technologies for natural resource conservation on private lands. These are offered every year through a couple of different ways. There's a national announcement, as well as a state and Oregon announcement, and there are also now on-farm trials. I haven't heard the announcement yet. I think that these usually come out in the spring, so we'll stay tuned and I'll let you know when those are available. There's also a newish, I think in the last year or two, Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production. This is not just focused on urban agriculture. It also includes looking at areas that have higher rates of poverty and low and higher food insecurity, and trying to come up with innovative ways to address that. So there are currently $7.5 million available nationally in competitive grants in 2 different categories. That includes planning projects and implementation projects. The sign-up deadline is March 27th. There's a bunch of information available on our website. And if you're interested, you can let me know and I can follow up on that. But those grants are available for nonprofit organizations, local government, tribes, schools, SWCDs. Okay, so jumping in a little bit to the way we deliver EQIP here in Oregon is through a strategic approach to conservation. We've been doing this for at least 10 years now, and it's a way to make sure that we are making good use of the limited funds that we have available. So instead of just waiting for anyone to walk in the door and doing little, random acts of conservation here and there that might not be collectively addressing one issue, we're trying to be more strategic in specific focus areas, looking at specific set of resource concerns over maybe a 3 to 5 year period, and really trying to see some measurable outcomes at the end of that so that we can see that we're actually moving the needle on these issues. In fiscal year 22, we had 5 of these conservation implementation strategies in the Waldport field office area. One of them was the Siletz Forest Strategy up in Lincoln County. We had the Siuslaw Salmon Sanctuary down here in Western Lane County and northwest part of Douglas County. There's Forest Resistance and Resilience Strategy that covers kind of a 4-county area around the Willamette Valley, but kind of over into the Coast Range as well. And then forest management planning was available all over Western Oregon. And the West Side Wildfire Recovery was specific for those areas affected by the 2020 Labor Day fires. So in our area, that included the Echo Mountain Fire up in Lincoln County. So now I'll go into our specific accomplishments for these CISs. The Siuslaw Salmon Sanctuary, the focus areas in this map here, you can see it's the coastal lakes area, the lower Siuslaw, North Fork, and Indian Creek subbasins. This strategy was in place from 2018 through 2022, and it was really focused on forest structure and composition, surface water quality, keeping sediment out of surface water, and aquatic habitat for coho salmon and other aquatic species. Over the course of that 5-year strategy, we had 3 contracts that were funded. 2 were in fiscal year 18 and 1 in FY19 for a total of just over $23,000. And that was mostly pre-commercial thinning and then some release as well. The strategy sunsetted last year, and we have a new strategy in place for fiscal year 23, and we'll talk about that in a minute. If anybody has questions about these along the way, feel free to put your hand up or put questions in the chat, and Tom can keep track of that. We'll also have some time for questions and answers at the end of my presentation, but if you have questions as we go along, feel free to interrupt. The Forest Resistance and Resilience Strategy was one that started in 2019 and was intended to go through this year, 2023. We have a potential to extend it again another year, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this is the focus area is in red on this map. It's pretty hard to see. I apologize for that. It is focused on private non-industrial forest in the foothills of the Coast Range and the Cascades. And it's really looking at our degraded forests where you've got monocultures of single species, Doug fir plantations that may have been planted in areas where that wasn't really the appropriate species. They weren't super well adapted. These forests are often more susceptible to infestations of pests and disease. That we've had a lot of drought stress in some of those Doug fir plantations, and they're very prone to wildfire. So we're trying to increase the diversity in order to increase their resilience to a lot of these stressors. So that can be through different types of thinning, underplanting with different species, looking at wildlife habitat, and just increasing the health of the forest overall. In our area, we've had 2 contracts in fiscal year 19 and 1 in fiscal year 21. And then this last year, we had 2 new contracts. One of them was really huge. So this covered 737 acres and $446,000 obligated. Over 700 acres of that was for thinning and slash treatment. We also had over 600 acres of tree planting. So that was going back in after areas have been thinned and adding some more species diversity. A lot of Western red cedar where that wasn't already there, but other shade tolerant species. And then it also included some riparian planting, treating invasive species, reed canary grass and Himalayan blackberry, and going back in with a diverse mix of native shrubs and trees. And then there was also some pollinator seeding along forest roads. So going back in after some clearing has been done and seeding slash piles with a pollinator mix for wildlife habitat benefit, but also culturally significant plants. I'm really excited to see how that works out. It's gonna be fun. The forest management planning was a new strategy this last year, available all across Western Oregon. The idea here is that in order for forest land to be eligible for cost share through EQIP or CSP, forest owners need to have a forest management plan in place. A lot of new forest landowners don't have that. And so we were trying to help folks with cost share assistance to hire a technical service provider, a professional forester, to work with them to develop a 10-year forest management plan that really takes into account the individual resource concerns on their property and their goals for what kind of management they're trying to do, whether that's timber production, wildlife habitat, recreation, whatever it is. We had 2 contracts last year, one in Lincoln and one in Lane County, for just about $7,000, and that covered 400 acres of forest management planning. This year, I've got 4 applications, 1 in Lincoln and 3 in Lane County, hoping to be able to fund all of those. And this really sets those landowners up to be eligible for cost share assistance on implementing the plans once they have them in place. So moving on to our national initiatives, high tunnel and organic. We've had a pretty strong interest continually in the high tunnel program, particularly in Lincoln County. I think we've got some older contracts in Lane County. This last year, we had 3 new high tunnels in Lincoln, just over $20,000 obligated for those. And I have 4 applications this year. At least one of those has been pre-approved. We had there's a lot of competition for that program. So there's always more applications than we're able to fund. But applications that aren't funded this year can always roll over to next year, and we'll see if there's more funding available next year. The organic initiative, we haven't had a whole lot of interest in our area. We had 1 contract back in fiscal year 21 that was for a high tunnel and cover crops. I didn't get any applications last year, and I just have 1 application this year in Lincoln County. EQIP CIC. So this is that stepping stone kind of between EQIP and CSP. As I mentioned, this was new in 2021. We had 2 contracts that year that were just over $77,000 obligated. We didn't have any applications last year. The sign up for this year hasn't been announced yet, but I think it will be very shortly. And the sign up deadline should be end of March, early April. This is available statewide, but each basin has different kind of focus for it. And so in our basin, we're looking at pasture management. So that includes both pasture land and farmsteads. We're trying to improve soil quality limitations, keep sediment, nutrients, and pathogens out of surface water, and improve degraded plant condition. So our 2 main methods for doing that are through prescribed grazing and nutrient management. These are annual management practices that would be planned for the length of the contract, but we have a lot of other practices that you can see here that are sort of the facilitating practices. So if somebody wants to do prescribed grazing but doesn't have a lot of cross fencing, we can help with that cross fencing. If they don't have livestock water in each of those paddocks, we can help with that, trying to make this possible. So I'm going to be doing some outreach for that, but definitely please help me with that outreach. If anybody has any neighbors or landowners that they know of who might be qualify and be interested in this program, I can provide more information. Our conservation stewardship program, these are the 5-year contracts that are for folks who have already been doing a lot of good management and then are kind of taking it to the next level, doing additional enhancements. We have 3 active contracts in Lane County. 2 of those were new last year. They covered 230 acres of private non-industrial forest land, and just over $38,000 obligated between the two contracts. And I wanted to give folks just an idea of what those enhancements look like. So, you know, the base practice might be brush management, pre-commercial thinning / treatment, but the CSP enhancements are brush management to improve wildlife habitat. So that can be a different type of wildlife, you know, depending on your area and your interest, or forest management to enhance understory vegetation. Another one that we did was the wildlife habitat management plan for upland landscapes. So actually developing a wildlife habitat management plan and then thinking about how to implement that, figuring out where the gaps are and what is needed to enhance the habitat for wildlife in that area, whether it's snags, down logs, brush piles, bird boxes or bat boxes, something like that. So there's different things like that that are available once you have the habitat management plan in place. And tree and shrub planting for wildlife food is another one. The Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, or CREP. As I said, this is a program through the Farm Service Agency, but there's OWEB funds that are part of that for the restoration portion of it up front, and then technical assistance from NRCS, as well as Oregon Department of Forestry, SWCDs, and watershed councils if they want to. This is available statewide. They're offered as either 10 or 15-year contracts, which are renewable. And the goal here again is enhancing streamside areas in agricultural lands for benefiting fish, wildlife, and water quality. We currently have 6 active contracts in Lincoln County and 6 active contracts in Western Lane County. We haven't used this program as much in our area as some other parts of the state. A lot of that is because we don't have a CREP technician here. So that's something that the SWCDs or watershed councils could think about in the future. If that is really a priority, then getting somebody who's really trained up and dedicated to working with landowners, developing those plans, doing the outreach would really make that more possible here. The land rental payment rates aren't very high in our area. So for small properties, it's not a big payoff, but the restoration costs do get covered, and it is, you know, a good program that's used a lot in other parts of the state. The Healthy Forest Reserve Program is part of our easements program. The goal of that one is to restore, enhance, and protect forest land for endangered species habitat in Oregon. That's focused on the northern spotted owl, as well as carbon sequestration, long-term carbon sequestration. We have 4 contracts that were signed between like 2009 and 2012. So that was pretty shortly after this program came about. And that covers 687 acres of permanent easements. These are working land easements, so they are able to harvest, but it's on a set schedule, and it's maintaining the habitat while they're doing those harvests. There has been continued interest in this program in our area. There has not been additional funding for new easements. Congress has reauthorized the program every 5 years with the new farm bill, but hasn't allocated additional funding for the easements. So there's been a little bit of money in the last couple of years for like 25 or 30 year restoration contracts, but not for the permanent easements. I know that there are folks that are still, you know, on the waiting list from 10 years ago who would still be interested. And I don't know if there will be additional funding for this, but the program is still around. One that there is more funding for and has been kind of underutilized is the Wetland Reserve Easements Program. So the goal here is is restoring wetlands for fish and wildlife habitat, improving water quality, reducing flooding, recharging groundwater. We currently have 2 easements in Western Lane County. Those are on the main stem Siuslaw and North Fork, kind of in tidal wetland areas. Those include 5 landowners and 385 acres of permanent easement. As I mentioned, the WRE is available for 30-year easements or permanent. This is something that we've been talking about with the easements team, of kind of trying to do some more outreach and a focus on tidal wetlands on the Oregon coast. I've been working with a few folks on developing some new outreach materials. And if there is interest from any of our local partners, I would love any assistance in either developing those materials or reaching out to potential landowners. I think it fits really well with the 2 OWEB FIP funding applications on the Central Coast. So that's the focused investment partnerships. There's one up in the more in Lincoln County area for the Oregon Coast Estuaries Collaborative. That's specifically focused on estuaries. And then the Siuslaw Coho Partnership also has some estuary focus in some of their projects. So I would love to talk with, work with you all on looking at where you have these prioritized areas for conservation, and if there are any landowners in those areas who might be interested in an easement program. So as I mentioned, we've got a new strategy in place starting this year in fiscal year 23, the Siuslaw Floodplain Reconnection, CIS. This is in Western Lane County and down into Northwest Douglas County in the Taconich Lake area. This is working with the Siuslaw Coho Partnership, kind of in tandem with that new FIP funding. We've got this CIS funding to help either partner on projects that you're already working on, or maybe work with adjacent landowners who could benefit from some of our conservation practices. These are focused on floodplains, tidal wetlands in these priority watersheds. It's a 5-year strategy. We're just rolling it out now. And the focus is really on aquatic habitat, that fish habitat, but also keeping sediment out of surface waters, water temperature, structure, and composition, making sure that we have the appropriate plants in those areas to support that wildlife habitat. We had 2 applications this year, and we're taking new applications all the time so we can start working on stuff for next year too. And then the other really big thing that's new this year is funding from the Inflation Reduction Act. NRCS has $19.5 billion that we will be able to use over the next 5 years. And mostly that's going to be funneled through our existing programs, EQIP, CSP, ASEP, and RCPP. We kind of are just having a little taster of it this year. We've got 2 million additional in EQIP funding. I think about double that in CSP this year, but that is really going to balloon over the next couple of years. And so we've been working on building up our capacity, trying to hire more staff to get this conservation out the door. But it's really going to take a lot of active partnerships and making sure that we've got everybody's involvement to see where this money can be best spent. This is a focus on climate smart agriculture and forestry mitigation activities. There's a list of these activities that's nothing new. These are conservation practices and enhancements, CSP enhancements that we already had, but they have been identified as either providing quantifiable reductions in greenhouse gas emissions or increases in carbon sequestration. What that looks like in our area is supporting a lot of the forestry work that we're already doing, because trees are a great way to store carbon, as well as soil. So soil health activities and pasture management to increase soil carbon levels in pasture land. Tom, do you mind putting that list in the chat? There's I think it's a couple pages long list of all of those activities. It's also available on our website, but that can give folks an idea of what sort of activities could be covered under this. So we'll have an announcement. I know they keep on saying it's any day now, and it still hasn't quite happened, but we should have this announcement out soon. So the sign up deadline will be 30 days from the announcement, probably end of March, early April timeline. For these additional funds this year. And then, like I said, we're going to have a whole lot more money available in the next coming years for this. And so this can either just provide additional funding for the strategies that we already have in place, or it could look at other areas. So that's what I've got for these. Are there any questions on any of the CISs I talked about, or this new funding? Anything else?
Briefly, Annie, that last one you were talking about, the climate smart stuff, you have a deadline, you know, it's supposed to come out early, you know, at some point this month, and then 30-day window. Are there going to be any signups this year, or is that it for 2023?
It'll just be one sign up this year, and then we'll have additional signups in future years. Again, I think it's, you know, like all of our programs, we accept applications anytime, but that'll be the ranking deadline for this year.
Okay, thanks.
Heather?
You're on mute, Heather.
Looks like your audio is not working.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
I just wanted to say, related to the Inflation Reduction Act and the additional, so just today I was approving our final information that will be going live on our website. Are working with public affairs today, so that should be coming out in the next couple days. And in Oregon, in our basin, covering southwestern Oregon, Lincoln, Lane, all the way down to California border, we only have about $500,000. Well, we only have $500,000 this year for Inflation Reduction Act. So with that, we're prioritizing, again, is what Annie said, those climate smart agriculture and forestry mitigation activities. So where we're looking at this year for funding is for the prioritizing, looking at the forest resiliency, conservation implementation strategy, the wildfire recovery in the Central Coast, that strategy as well, and the Williams Community Forest strategy, and that's in Josephine County. So those are our three areas that we're prioritizing the very limited funds that we will be getting. And again, I just approved that on our website today, so it should be rolling out either today or tomorrow. Thanks.
Thanks, Heather. Any other questions on these programs? All right, we can always take more questions later at the end too, but at this point I will stop sharing and turn this over to Seth.
All right, can you all see that?
We can.
All right. Sweet. Okay, yeah, so most of you already know me, but Seth Mead, watershed conservationist from the Siuslaw SWCD. Been with the district since 2010, so going on 13 plus years. The district boundaries to the north and south, they just follow the county line, and to the east, it extends just downstream of Triangle Lake. And then within that geography, we have 2 active focus areas where we're allocating about 1/3 of our time and resources to addressing resource constraints in these 6 field watersheds. That's both Fiddle in blue and Maple in yellow, both of which drain into Siuslaw Lake. And so, yeah, spending a significant portion of our time and resources addressing issues, natural resource issues in those 2 6 fields. Anyways, the district's mission is to promote and encourage responsible stewardship of our natural resources through the delivery of technical assistance, conservation programs, and assisting in educational activities. The district has a suite of programs, and we're going to start off with the ones that were a little more active, or at least have been in recent years. We got our ag water quality program, where we're working with producers to balance ecologic and economic viability. In essence, these are working lands. We want to help the producers maximize their yield, but do so in an environmentally friendly manner that, provides cool, clean water and high quality habitats at the same time. So a lot of, let's say, in-stream work, riparian plantings, and riparian, exclusion fencing, that kind of stuff. Over the last year, I'm trying to think, out Fiddle, we completed the 2nd phase of Bear Creek habitat enhancement, which is the largest trib in the Fiddle Creek Basin. And I believe we treated about 1/2 mile with conifer largewood placement, planted and fenced about 5 acres of riparian area. So that's just an example of what we're doing out there. And then we have funds for phase 3 that's coming on board now, and we're going to begin implementation this in-water work period. Then we have our watershed restoration program, where we follow a stronghold approach, basically protect and enhance, work within those basins that already have components that are functioning well, and build on top of those. You get a lot bigger bang for your buck, where you're starting off in those kind of areas that are already partially working versus starting in a basin that's completely hosed, and you're starting from a clean slate and have to invest enormous amounts of money to get a minor benefit. So that's the line of thinking there. With this program, we're looking to design and implement process-based restoration, basically, addressing the underlying issues within a watershed or a site instead of the resulting symptoms, working with nature instead of against it. So, an example of that would be our floodplain restorations, where we're resetting the stage for nature to take over and self-sustain high quality habitat. This is a photo of our North Fork and McLeod floodplain restoration. We implemented, the planting portion of it concluded last spring. We'll be doing maintenance on that and monitoring it for the next 5 or so years. We have another one coming up this summer, Hanson Creek, and another one up Deadwood, the Dorf Steinberg property, next year, supposedly. So that's what we're shooting for. Definitely one of our more active programs. We have our education and outreach program. In essence, we're just looking to get our agronomists out in the field off of digital devices, and trying to get them outside and to basically just foster an understanding of watershed processes and land stewardship ethic. It works best just to get the kids outside and get them out excited about being in some of the natural wonders that we have here locally. We're pretty rich in that sense. Get them outside, get them fishing, get them swimming, get them doing whatever, just to try to develop, a sense of integrity when it comes to the outside. And yeah, then we have our noxious weed control program where we assist landowners in developing integrated approaches to address any kind of target species we have on their property. Strategic efforts focusing on target species, working off the state and federal priority lists, and definitely works best when you have a early detection rapid response, which is the opposite of what you see in the picture here. Basically an old growth patch of Scotch broom that nobody knew about for a decade and fully established, and now we gotta have to combat it with a pretty integrated approach. So anyways, those are the district's programs at the time being, and we have one full-time employee, me, so we definitely have to prioritize our time and resources. That being said, we are definitely chasing down additional funds to increase our capacity, and yeah, we're really hoping over the next year or so that we can get another person or two and really heighten the scale and pace of our efforts. So anyways, yeah, any questions or anything?
Thanks, Seth. It's a good
Yeah,
little
thank you.
rundown on all of your activities. I think you undersell yourself. You've been very busy doing a lot of great work. But it's nice to see the
Oh, thanks.
diversity of stuff that you guys are covering. Great. It looks like we're a little ahead of schedule. I might just do our kind of quick update on some of the other sorry, share my screen again, on some of the other USDA programs that we've got, and then we can take a quick little stretch break here. There we go. You guys all seeing my screen again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to mention some of these programs. They're not as related to some of the activities that we've been talking about, but want to make folks aware of that these exist. The Farm Service Agency and Rural Development are kind of our sister agencies in USDA. In a lot of service centers, we're all co-located. For our area, I'm just in the Forest Service office, but our main office is kind of over in Tangent, and so that's where all three agencies are located. The Farm Service Agency has a lot of different emergency and disaster relief programs right now related to drought, wildfire, floods, the pandemic, all sorts of stuff. So they have a lot of different signups. I'm not able to stay up on all of that, but if you're interested in any of that, definitely reach out to them. They also offer farm loans and crop insurance. And they have something called the Organic Certification Cost Share Program. This is available for producers who are already certified organic and want to maintain their certification, or folks who are looking to transition and want some help with paying those fees associated with the certification process. I think that sign up is usually in the fall, and it happens every year. But again, if you are interested, definitely reach out to the FSA folks. Our Lane County office is over in Eugene. They've got a new staff person, Crystal, who is really awesome. She's been super helpful so far. And then the county executive director or acting one is Heather Tritt. She's up in Tangent. She covers a 4-county area. So she's definitely busy, but she's also really good and knows her stuff. She's been around for a while. The other agency is Rural Development. They offer a lot of different programs, many of which I'm not super familiar with, that includes like housing loans. I get questions about that sometimes for the single family or multifamily housing. They have rural development grants that are kind of available to local governments, entities, whatever, value-added producer grants, rural utility programs, a lot of different stuff. So again, I just put some of the contact information for those state programs on here. And then there's a rural development office in the Tangent office. So you can ask those folks and they can direct you to whichever program might be applicable. Frozen again here, sorry. There we go. There's a new program that's going to be rolled out this year, the Organic Transition Initiative. This is a kind of partnership effort of a number of different agencies within USDA. And it's looking at helping those farmers who are not certified organic right now, but are looking to transition. And it's got 3 different areas. The first one is mentoring and advice. So this is setting folks up with these regionally based farmer training and education programs. There's supposed to be 6 different hubs across the country that are working with local partner groups to kind of head those up. Then there's going to be farmer direct assistance. So this will be through NRCS. There'll be financial assistance available through a new conservation practice called organic management. I haven't seen that yet. It's supposed to come out soon, but it's also working on just building our staff's capacity to provide technical assistance to organic producers. So we've got folks in our Western Tech Center up in Portland who are organic specialists. And I think that they're going to be rolling out a lot of training to the field office staff to help support us in doing a better job of working with our organic producers and folks who are looking to transition to organic. And then the third part of this program is through the agricultural, oh, sorry, I missed one. So RMA is offering assistance with crop insurance for these folks who are transitioning to organic. And then the agricultural marketing service is working on pinpointed organic market development across the country for these new organic producers. This is a $300 million effort, multi-agency, and we have not seen a specific sign up for this yet. The details are still kind of being developed. I would expect there to be something later this year and then more in the future. All right, so I think we will leave it there. I've got 10:55, so we will just take a quick 5-minute stretch break. Everybody can go run to the restroom, refresh your tea or coffee, and we'll start back up at 11. All right. Looks like 11 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started again. So this is the part where I'm going to hopefully stop talking as much and get a chance to hear from you all. I wanted to go over a couple of potential new strategies that we've got kind of in the hopper, and then also just give an opportunity for anybody to propose other things that we might not be currently addressing that you see as priorities. So just thinking about what makes a good conservation implementation strategy, we're trying to figure out where our NRCS funds will be most impactful. We, can only work with non-industrial private forest land, private agricultural land, and tribal land. So we can't work on public forest land or state. We need willing producers and landowners who want to work with us, which is sometimes the challenge. And then it really helps to have momentum from partners who have already been doing the work or are helping with outreach, whatever, to make our efforts go smoother and go farther. So this is a new strategy that's kind of in development right now for our whole basin. This would be the lower Willamette, Central Coast, and Southwest area. At the need for increased food security and climate resiliency. So this is something that came up in the last couple of years during the pandemic, when we had a lot of supply chain disruptions and folks not having access to fresh food, to local food. This strategy would try to address that by looking at improving soil organic matter depletion, increasing plant productivity and health, and also looking at terrestrial habitat for wildlife, pollinators, other types of animals on the farm in farms that are contributing to local food markets and initiatives. So this could be through the local farmers markets, distribution to restaurants and stores in the area, or community gardens, tribal gardens, stuff like that. The practices that we were looking at including here, sorry, I'm gonna move this out of my way here. Sorry, it's a little bit small. Hopefully you can all see. So this includes cover crops, crop rotation, mulching, soil carbon amendment, doing some soil testing, maybe habitat plantings for hedgerows, whatever, to have pollinator habitat on farms, high tunnels, and then also for pasture livestock systems, looking at prescribed grazing, forage and biomass plantings, and some other supporting practices for the grazing management. So this is just kind of something that we started thinking about, and I really would love to have input from local folks on whether you think this is important, if we're missing anything here that we should be including, and local partners to try to hook up with in doing the outreach and getting this actually on the ground if it does get approved. Ray.
Yes, I am just overjoyed to see this emphasis being recognized and the potentials for landowners and water quality issues and potentials for agroforestry, the high tunnel program, and other methods of seasonal temperature protection experimentation and implementation locally. And I think that with the uncertainty of current agricultural practices across the nation and around the world, that we likely will be seeing a lot of shortfalls in food availability coming from a distance. And I think it's only prudent for us to be emphasizing local food production preparation, for that. So I think this is essential and very worthwhile looking into and trying to figure out, how we can be most effective in local food production. So
Great.
kudos.
Thanks,
Hey,
Ray.
Annie, do you care if I
Yeah.
interrupt? Yeah,
Yeah,
just basically,
please.
I would like to, in essence, reiterate Ray's comments. I think if COVID did anything for us, it showed us the shortfalls of globalization. I do think that there are landowners out there that are kind of coming to grips with the fact that, we could be doing a lot more locally. So anything to help kind of provide a little energy there. Definitely, I think it's worthwhile for sure. We're, in my mind, ag on the west side is not as diverse as it should be, and I think there's ample opportunity to expand that. So yeah, again, I think this would be a good one to follow through with if possible.
The more that I've been experimenting with potential ag crops here that are water quality friendly and water quantity friendly, not needing irrigation and being high value for low acreage that landowners could put in a small amount in an experimental fashion to see how it affects their economic outlook, is so valuable in being able to have some demonstration landowner farms and in to differing degrees of workload for those landowners, so they have choices in how much time and energy they can contribute to this. We got people that are still working full jobs elsewhere, and yet if they do some preparation for locally adapted varieties of crops that could be planted, especially in agroforestry, those trees could be growing up while people are still working hard at their careers, and will be ready then for when they have a little bit more time later on to benefit from. And just the increase in land values immediately to landowners once they've established some orchards or other sorts of crops, but orchards that can progress with maybe minimal amounts of workload for a while, and then have them grow up and be able to produce is, a big deal if it's providing local food production that can go to farmers markets, and then if there's excess in the local area, being able to market those at a regional level, I think is just makes logical sense right now, given the insecurities for food that are seen by a lot of folks right now.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So my thought on this, I've got there's a small farms extension agent in Lincoln County who's very interested in this and is going to be a good partner for up in that area. And 10 Rivers Food Web is been more active kind of in the Willamette Valley, but is trying to cover Lincoln and Lane, all of Lane County as well. So I want to reach out to them, but I'm wondering if there are any other local partners in the area who I should be working with on this as far as development and outreach of this kind of a program.
Well, as far as beyond the Siuslaw into the Willamette Valley, there's the Farm and Food Coalition folks, and the Fill Your Pantry program for local farmers to sell products in the fall of the year, that kind of thing. So there's definitely a lot of different folks around and that are involved in trying to think this sort of thing out that could be collaborators.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think it'll be important to make sure that we're really tapping into a lot of those, the current infrastructure and those groups that are already doing stuff to try to do some of the outreach and get more folks interested and involved in this, and as well as like working with the farmers markets and things like that. Thanks for that input. Any other thoughts on that one before I move on?
I also, you know, if there's any, you know, of course, monitoring and trying to understand, you know, what sorts of problems might crop up to crops. You know, monitoring is really important in soil health and in foliar micronutrient health in the crops that we try to produce. So any monitoring funding that can kind of be emphasized as available to landowners to support this kind of potential, and then the potential that there is for growers cooperative development, I think is, you know, going to be huge in the future here. So yeah, maybe not huge compared to the Willamette Valley potential, but certainly for the Siuslaw potential and the Lincoln area. So anything that can be emphasized in funding planning in this direction, I think, is a big bang for the buck and outcomes in the future.
Great, thank you. All right, so the next one is the forest resistance and resilience. So this is the one that we've had in place now for 5 years. It has been more focused over kind of in the Willamette Valley area, the foothills of the Cascades and Coast Range. It came over into our area a little bit. This map, unfortunately, is not great, easy to see. The outlined area in kind of like teal is the focus area. So that included a few of our watersheds in the Western Lane, Upper Siuslaw area. The yellow stars are, no, sorry, the orange stars are areas where we had contracts, you know, roughly, where our contracts were implemented so far in the strategy. So we had 2 in the Upper Alsea area, 1 up in Triangle Lake area, and then one on Chickahominy area. So the yellow are roughly the area where I've had more interest in this strategy, or where we've got folks who are developing a forest management plan or applying to develop a forest management plan, and then would like to be able to implement these types of forest health, resilience and resistance strategies. We're trying to figure out if we extend this CIS for another year, which it seems like there is interest in doing from our other counties that are involved in this. What's a strategic way for us to expand the focus area in Lincoln and West Lane County to meet the need that we have to make this funding available for this diversifying and improving forest health in a strategic way? So I posed this question in the Lincoln group, and there was interest in expanding, you know, all over the county, right? So we've got private forest land kind of scattered all over the place that has these characteristics and that is threatened by droughts, wildfire, now pests and disease. We've got sudden oak death, that little outbreak that's been identified up in Lincoln City is an ongoing, ODA is kind of monitoring that, and we're hoping it's not going to spread, but that is, an issue now. And then the elm beetle is another thought that, folks brought up, that we don't have or I'm sorry, not an elm, ash.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of ash in our area compared to like the Willamette Valley, but there are pockets where it is, and the beetle is going to make it here eventually. So is that something that we need to be thinking about? Yeah, so I will open up the floor for any thoughts on how do we prioritize our forest health funding in our area.
Well, one aspect that I think is very important to do is considering, how the climate is changing and the susceptibility of some of the dominant species here may become more on the edge of their preference range and maybe having more disease problems and whatnot in the future. So I'm really concerned about having a diversity of little pockets, islands of species that could seed the area as, potentially the Douglas fir or some of the others dominant species maybe start having more difficulty, that we already have little islands of diversity that could spread out. So that's something to be thinking about, I think, pretty heavily, because I doubt that this is going to slow up quickly.
Mm-hmm. Ty had a comment in the chat about Swiss needlecast, that is becoming more of an issue for Doug fir, particularly in the coastal fog belt area.
Yeah, one of
And
those signs of, of impending decline in some of the dominants.
Yeah, so there's a lot of areas now where folks are not replanting with Doug fir. It's going back as hemlock or, a mix of other species, but
yeah, and
that's
then the
something to
other
think about.
issue is how many crop rotations can you get off of this forestry without depleting the soil so much that then you have deficiencies in calcium or easily leachable macronutrients and micronutrients that can affect the forest health. So that's constantly something we have to deal with here because of our copious leaching rains and snow melt are taking some of those leachable elements out of our soils already. And if we, when we do extractive resource export out of here, we are exporting that calcium and magnesium out of here, and it leaves some deficiency potential there, especially with the pH effects of the more acid rain that we have so often here. It makes our local area at a much higher risk for leaching of nutrients out of our soils, and we need to be paying attention to that potential, and wherever we can consider that in the management practices.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of, from our Lincoln discussion last week, was going to follow up with ODF and ODFW to see whether they have any mapped priority areas for the mid-coast as far as any of these disease or pest issues or wildfire risk, stuff like that. I know ODF had a new wildfire risk map that they released, and I think took back pretty quickly because it was a bit controversial, but
Hmm.
but trying to look at, is there a way to target any certain areas within our geography that might be higher priority for this funding. But I'm open to other suggestions too.
Could I go ahead and make a comment, Annie?
Yeah, Seth.
Okay, so I think the prioritizing this is problematic because it's such a wide scale issue. Back when most of these plantations were logged, everybody was logging. They were going, hey, getting their cutout. And so you have a lot of stands between, 30 to 70 years old that are all these monocultures that are replanted on the, they're basically plantations, monocultures of single species for the most part. So you're having this issue is pretty prevalent across the entire landscape, and you're going to have everyone and their brother somewhat, they're going to have all these random spots, people asking for it, and it's going to be hard to align everybody's wishes. That being said, like, I don't know, you have a map there that kind of shows where you've had some interest. De facto, you could just go back to the people that you didn't serve last time, in essence. You could also do, if you have a GIS person that is crafty, you could eliminate a lot of these 6 fields because they're largely, let's say 80 to 100% industrial timber, or like the ones up in the checkerboard, and it's all BLM or checkerboard, and anybody that's the private side of the checkerboard, it's all industrial timber. There's very few ma and pa outfits in those watersheds. So if you have somebody run a detailed GIS exercise, you could eliminate and come up with you probably cut your watersheds in number wise in half, and then you could whittle it down from there. I don't know. Those are just ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thank you. Any other thoughts on the forest health? We will move on. I've got one more kind of project that's in the very initial thought stage at this point, but there is funding that's been available up in Washington for native Olympia oyster restoration. They've been working with a pretty active partnership up in the Puget Sound for several years now doing this work. And there are some folks here on the Oregon coast that we're thinking, well, can we do something similar in Oregon? The kind of obvious targets would be Yaquina Bay, as well as Netarts Bay and Coos Bay. That's where the oyster work has been done so far over the last 10 to 15 years. So this would be available to shellfish producers, NGOs, tribes that own or lease shellfish beds. And the practice that's used is restoration of rare and declining natural communities. There are similar shellfish restoration programs in a couple other states on the East Coast, I think Florida and Rhode Island. And in those cases, I believe that they are doing it through RCPP. So that's the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, where you have a partner as the lead, kind of putting the project forward and providing some match, and then NRCS was providing some additional funding. So kind of the question here would be, is there a local partner who would want to take that on? And what exactly is our need? How many potential interested landowners or operators do we have? And is this something that we would like to move forward with? So I've had very initial discussions with a few folks. Dick Vanderschaff with the Nature Conservancy and Stan Van de Wettering with the Siletz tribe are the folks who have been doing a lot of this work. Steve Rumrell with ODFW is also very interested, and there's a couple other researchers with OSU who've been doing work on this. So I have it just on my kind of radar to try to get together an initial meeting of all of these folks and anybody else who would be interested to see what the potential is and how we would move forward. I don't think we would have anything that we're proposing for funding next year, but maybe, you know, the following year, just kind of setting that stage and starting to gather input and ideas. So I
Yeah.
wanted to throw that out there.
Annie, I'd be interested in keeping up on how this is progressing with different interest groups on the
Okay.
coast. And, you know, I think it is such an intensively water quality issue for production that there are shortfalls in water quality assessment, and that monitoring could be done as part of this work. And I would be for trying to lend help in trying to push the idea of better water quality assessment to see how feasible this is in different areas.
Mhm. Great. Thanks for that.
Yeah, Annie, I saw it on the agenda and I was like, it caught my eye. Because I'm intrigued by it. I don't know how I'd carve out time to help, but I definitely intrigued by it. I'd like to kind of keep tabs on it if possible and help
Sure.
if an opportunity presents itself down the line. You know, in my spelunking around the mid-coast, I've came across places where they were either there or it was you know, some of the propagated species up north had colonized something. So I know of a few spots where I've came across them and their shells that I don't think are on any maps, but they're also not on private land. You know, it's I think those were probably owned by the Forest Service. So anyways, I'm curious, and I think there's limited you know, I'd be curious on the opportunity given with our geography. I mean, basically you have the Siuslaw, and I don't know too many people there. I know one producer that's doing stuff, but anyways, yeah, I'd be curious to see the need or the level of opportunity. I think it'd be a wicked thing to develop. I think it's awesome. It'd be interesting to see where it all goes.
Yeah, great. I will definitely keep both of you on my list for when we get together a meeting and see who the potential, you know, interested partners are and kind of think about how would this really work.
Yeah.
But I know that, yeah, the Celeste tribe is definitely interested in this moving forward. And
I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if the Confederated tribes of the Siuslaw, Umpqua, and Siuslaw were as well, and they actually might have lands or that could be suitable to developing something along these lines, as well as the sleds for that matter. But
down in this Bay Area.
yeah, exactly. And then maybe even, I know they do a bit of water quality testing here. I just don't know where exactly I'd have to look at their parcels. But anyways, yeah, either way, interesting idea for sure.
Great. So I'm kind of a novice at this whole thing, just been reading up and trying to, get up to speed on who's working on it, what's going on. So I'll be reaching out over the next couple of months and try to set up an initial meeting and see how that goes. So that was all I have for our projects in development. We can kind of go to the partner updates and priorities, or a round robin, or if there's any other specific projects or ideas that we've missed that folks would like to see us working on. Into those suggestions now too.
Yeah, I don't know what carbon sequestration, you know, can be thought about on local pasture lands or croplands as far as biochar goes, but you know, I think there's a lot of potential for increasing the local carbon sequestration using some of those techniques.
Yeah, there's been a lot of cool biochar work done, kind of down in the southwest, Josephine, Jackson County area, I think, Douglas County. And they've got some kind of prototype, I don't know if they're mobile biochar things that forest landowners can use. And then, you know, that material could be available to pasture land or cropland, whatever. I've sort of peripherally been following that, but I haven't, you know, read up on the latest developments there. But
especially the potential for including biochar application maybe into pasture land that is thought to be likely be used in the future as cropland. You know, doing that ahead of time so there wouldn't be as much disturbance soil ecology wise, you know, might be really beneficial to prep some of these finger valleys for agricultural use.
We lost your audio, Annie, or I couldn't hear you.
Well, while Annie's figuring that out, I can help lead and Annie can take notes. She's still listening in here with us, but if there's other partners that would like to contribute thought, and I just added into the chat that Ray was mentioning the biochar application. That's kind of the thought behind the soil carbon amendment practice that was listed in the local food CIS that Annie had presented. So there is some thought on that, Ray, and in the Valley, they've been doing some biochar stuff and there's lots of ideas. I have not seen a lot of data talking about efficacy or rates. And one thing I'd be concerned about is putting a bunch of carbon somewhere and tying up nitrogen, you know, so I'm excited about the biochar, but I'm also a little bit cautious too. You know, it just feels like there's a lot of information we don't have yet.
Yeah, for certain. There are a lot of questions about the local predominance of red alder stands in the Coast Range. Mostly red alder through the Cascades and elsewhere aren't in dominant stands like they are here, and that has a big effect on nitrogen fixation and maybe potential for helping fertilize cropland as well. I don't know, but there's things to be thinking about as far as that goes, especially with fertilizer shortages looming.
Annie, I just hit admit. Was that you that tried to just join our meeting?
It is. I'm sorry.
Think you gotta listen to the volume either on your phone or your computer.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
Sounds good, Annie.
Okay. Sorry about that. I got a new computer and it has just decided to randomly kill my mic during Zoom meetings. Pretty fun. All right. Thanks for carrying on that conversation. Tom, I was kind of listening in. Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying about biochar has a lot of great potential. There's a lot of variability in the material, both, you know, what feedstock they're using and the methods that they're using to produce it, and then whether it's inoculated or treated in any way before you're applying it, and you'll get very, very different results with those different types of materials. So I think there's really great research going on, and I definitely think it's something worth continuing to watch, but it's hard to know sometimes, you know, how to make a a good prescription on, you know, apply this much biochar to this area and you will see these results, because it hasn't quite reached that level of I don't know, consistency, I guess, in the process.
Right. I think there's a lot of potential too for other crops in conjunction with young plantations, truffles, and inoculating filbert orchards for truffle production. You know, and I've been considering the possibility that that might be a viable thing for chestnut land as well. But at any rate, just trying to think more about other potential income crops that we can do, and truffles might be one, along with other fungi.
Yeah.
And that can be supported by charcoal inoculation for biochar.
Yeah. All right, so I've lost my thread a little bit of where we are. Let's see. Oh yeah.
Annie, I think if there's partners that want to share updates, that might inform some of your future direction.
Yeah, that would be great. We'll go ahead and do that. Folks can raise your hand or put in the chat if you would like to share, and we can just go that way. And this doesn't have to be necessarily ideas for what you want to see NRCS doing, but any kind of updates that you've got on work that your organization is doing, anything else?
So NRCS, with our focused strategic approach, we're trying to match our dollars with partner dollars. So we're not working all alone. So even if you've got projects that aren't NRCS related, it might help inform Annie of how she could tailor her programs to match what you guys are already working on.
I guess if nobody else is gonna jump in, I'll just say, you know, I think that floodplain CIS is just starting. You should definitely see that through. I have a project that I've just started chasing money for next year, that Dorf Steinberg property up in Deadwood. I'm pretty sure your equip, it would, you know, fit for that, because they're just private landowners. They're definitely not industrial timber. And so I think as far as the district's concerned, that, you know, I might have something I'll be submitting to you, or we might, you know. And then I'm guessing some of the tribes and potentially Mackenzie River Trust might have some other floodplain stuff coming up as well, where we might be able to tap your resources on that floodplain CIS.
Great, that's good to hear. Thanks, Seth. Eli, do you want to share?
Yeah, I wanted to share, we are set to close on the Site 59 property probably in the next 2 weeks. We just got the donation agreement done, and there's a NRCS easement on that property. So we should probably talk more, Annie, at some point. But yeah, it looks like it's going to close. We're going to open escrow next week, and however fast we can move it through that, we'll own it. And then we'll probably be looking at NRCS funds as something to match for the North Fork Bend restoration, potentially some work at Estergard at Site 59, and then also maybe at Wren Marsh, which is on the other side from Waite Ranch. And then we have a couple other acquisition projects in the Siuslaw right now that are not public quite yet. We don't have signed agreements for working on them yet, but there's potentially going to be a lot more land coming to MRT that we'll be applying for funding for restoration for too. So busy.
That's great.
All right.
Yeah.
Good to hear. And I just saw that you guys are hiring a new coastal restoration person. Is that it?
Yeah, I should probably mention that too. We are hiring a restoration and stewardship manager for the South Coast area. We're looking at having over 850 acres of ownership in the Siuslaw estuary, probably in the next couple years. So we need more capacity in that area to help manage all that land. So the position would be managing the restoration projects down there, and then fulfilling all the stewardship obligations we have, which is like monitoring boundaries and encroachment, and caring for the land and cleaning up things that get dumped and all the fun things that land trusts get to do. So we're hiring that position right now for extra help. And we're also hiring 4 other positions right now. We need lots of help. So if anybody wants to plug that in their networks, it'd be great. MRT, it's McKenzieRiver.org/jobs, has all but one posted on there right now. We're hiring a volunteer program coordinator. Elizabeth is moving up and she's now the community engagement manager. And so we're gonna backfill her volunteer coordination position. We're hiring a acquisitions manager to help us with all our real estate transactions, a valley-based restoration project manager to manage all the restoration projects in the valley, so I don't have to do it anymore. And we're going to be hiring a grants manager specialist as well. And I think there's one more that I'm forgetting, but there's a lot.
Great. Kidding. Did I see somebody else's hand?
So Annie, can I just interject just briefly? So this meeting, we're capturing conversations that Annie's been having all year long. This is our kind of formal meeting where we're collecting this input and getting it listed for the record. So if you come up with ideas later, please reach out to Annie and share your ideas with her, even if you're not thinking of it right now. Like I was saying, these are conversations that go on all year long, and we're just documenting the conversations we've been having at this one meeting today.
Thanks, Tom.
I'm curious about what Nathan, he put it in the chat. Through the RRCPP, eligible partners can put together a proposal focused on the Healthy Forest Reserve Program. Because honestly, that's been something that comes up all the time. I mean, I hear it a lot. There's just never any money. So it's something that the landowners around here are definitely into, but it's one of the few programs you don't have any money allocated towards. What's the likelihood of actually getting that funded? Like if I spent the time to go through and do, and I know your guys' applications are full on, so it'd take a while, it'd be a lofty endeavor, but what would you, I mean, honestly, do you think that would get funded, or do you think there'd be a good chance? And I'm just curious, isn't the RCPP, you got to have a, like a, what do you call it, certified planner for that one, right? No?
But there is sort of the match requirement. So they look for a 1-to-1 match of partner funds with NRCS funds. And I think that's the challenge with HFRP, because those easements are so expensive. And I don't know, you know, ODS has a little bit of money for some stewardship easement kind of things, but not much. I don't know where else we would come up with that. Matching funds.
Well,
I think it's a, but yeah,
I'll
that's
think
kind of
about
a limit. Heather, did you have something else to add to that?
Well, I just wanted to say with the can you hear me okay?
mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. With the Inflation Reduction Act, we are getting, not only for our EQIP and CSP programs, we are getting a huge amount of funds for the Regional Conservationist Partnership Program and some of those forestry areas. So we will see a huge amount of funds available for partners. that want to apply for the RCBP, and as Nate had put in the link, the Healthy Forest Reserve Program is only available through RCPP, and a partner can identify whatever species that they would like to have in there. So that could be easements, or that could be a combination of programs. Everything is RCPP like. And so that could be any partner. And usually it's like, it is, in the past, it's been a one-to-one match. Nationally, they're looking at modifying that quite a bit. Everything with the HFRP program is changing. We thought we would have a application date coming out soon. Yesterday for our leadership team, we were just told that could be coming out sometime in March, but that could be anybody is a partner. That could be ODF, that could be we've had conservation districts lead those RSVPs in the state. You do not have to be a conservation planner to apply as a lead partner. That lead partner just has to wrangle all the cats on how you want to put that strategy together. Typically, we've had something in Oregon. We've been extremely successful with our CBP. Usually we tie off of one of our CIS's, conservation implementation strategies, and then roll that up into our CPP. And in Oregon and in other states, we've had tribes lead our CPP as well. So that could be any partner leading that. So again, we're looking at nationally a lot of funds available through our CPP.
Awesome. Another, like, okay, curious, like, I know you have somewhere there's a list of people, a waiting list for that Healthy Forest Reserve thing. Could we, I mean, I know they have to sign something saying it's publicly available, or that you can communicate it to interested parties or whatever. If I was throwing something together, obviously you'd have to abide by those those restrictions, but is there any way I could maybe be privy to that so I can follow up with those guys and see if they were still interested if I was going to be putting something like this together?
And that is the beauty of you, Seth, and Ray being here, is you're a district partner. You are exactly what Annie said at the beginning, why NRCS is here, because you are the locally led partner. And with being with the NRCS and SWCDs, that is how we can share this information. So yes, Annie can give you some of that.
Awesome.
Well, I think I'd like to take this opportunity, since we're all conservationists here, just to state that I think the very most important improvement we could make for background for all of the conservation activities we are doing is to promote water quality monitoring of the degree of alkalinity in our watersheds in the Coast Range. So anytime any of us has the chance to see opportunities for funding for monitoring for alkalinity, just know that I think that it's the most important thing for us to do now for our planning in the future.
That's a good point. Thanks for that, Ray. I know it's always really hard to find monitoring funds. Everybody wants to see what the outcomes of our projects are, but none of the funders really want to fund the monitoring. I mean,
yes,
Seth has been doing
but when
water quality.
When it's understood that those are that is a huge potential limiting factor right here, you know, then it figures economically in a huge way for the success of our outcomes in the future.
Yeah.
Just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
After about 30 years of looking at the issue.
Ray, real quick, Is
Yep.
that easily testable?
Yes,
So in theory, we could work it into stuff we're already doing and then it not be a like complete overhaul.
yes, I think it's readily doable, yeah.
All right, well, you and I should.
We
follow
should,
up.
we should, okay.
Okay.
Anything else here for the good of the order? Before we wrap up. I've got my contact info on here. Please reach out to me if you think of anything else, you know, tomorrow or down the road. Have any other questions or ideas? I'm definitely open. I will have notes written up for this and I'll email those out to everybody and they'll also be available on our website. And we've got the recording available for anybody who wasn't able to join us today. They can watch that later. But like Tom was saying, these are conversations that we have, you know, kind of going on throughout the year. So we're always thinking about how to make sure that the work that we're doing is effective and really prioritizing the top issues and thinking towards the future. I'm going to be kind of overdue for an overhaul of our long range plan for the Willamette, or sorry, for the Waldport Field Office. I don't know if I'll get that totally done this year, but definitely want to add in any missing top priority issues that we've been talking about.
Well, thank you, everybody, for all of the work you do.
Thank you, Ray. Great to have you here. Thanks everyone for joining.
All right,
Take care. See you all soon.
you all.
Thank
care.
you,
Adios.
everybody.